The cargo bay doors hissed open, and Dr. Robert Hayes pulled his anti-gravity cart through the entrance of Station Omega-7. Behind him, a collection of reinforced transport crates hummed softly with climate control systems. Inside those crates were his life's work, 17 rescued animals from Earth, creatures that had nowhere else to go after their habitats had been destroyed by corporate mining operations. Robert wiped sweat from his forehead and glanced at the nearest crate. A pair of dark eyes stared back at him through the transparent panel. Scout, his young honey badger, pressed a paw against the inside of the container and made a chittering sound. The animal had been with him for 8 months now, ever since Robert found him orphaned in the Kalahari Desert. Scout's mother had been killed by poachers, and the cub would have died within days if Robert hadn't intervened. "Almost there, buddy," Robert said softly. "Just need to clear customs and we'll get you settled in the habitat pods." Station Omega-7 was humanity's newest trading post on the edge of explored space. 6 months ago, humans had finally been accepted into the Galactic Council after decades of negotiation. Robert had jumped at the chance to establish an Earth wildlife research station here. He wanted to show the galaxy that humans cared about more than just profit and expansion. They cared about the creatures they shared their world with. A shadow fell across Robert's path. He looked up to see 3 tall figures blocking his way. They were Draxians, reptilian creatures with dark green scales and cybernetic implants grafted onto their arms and shoulders. The leader stood nearly 7 feet tall with a ridge of bone plates running down his spine. His yellow eyes studied Robert with obvious contempt. "You are the human animal keeper," the Draxian said. It wasn't a question. His voice sounded like gravel scraping against metal. "Wildlife conservationist," Robert corrected politely. "Dr. Robert Hayes, and you are?" "Captain Oleth of the merchant vessel Talon's Pride." The Draxian crossed his massive arms. "I have heard disturbing reports that you bring creatures from your death world to this station." Robert felt his jaw tighten. He had heard Earth called that before. Many species in the galaxy considered his home planet unusually dangerous. Most alien worlds had evolved relatively peaceful ecosystems. Earth, with its constant ice ages, meteor strikes, and fierce predator-prey relationships, was an anomaly. "I'm bringing rescued animals to a proper sanctuary facility," Robert explained. "They're completely contained and pose no threat to anyone." One of the other Draxians, a younger male with fewer cybernetic parts, laughed. "No threat? Have you seen him, Oleth? He is barely larger than a hatchling, and he speaks of threats." The third Draxian pointed at Scout's crate. "What is that small thing?" "It looks like prey." Scout had pressed himself against the front panel now, staring at the aliens with intense curiosity. His black and white striped face made him look almost friendly, but Robert knew better. Honey badgers had a reputation on Earth, a very specific reputation. "That's a honey badger," Robert said carefully, "and I'd appreciate it if you didn't disturb him. He's still young and adjusting to space travel." Captain Oleth stepped closer to the crate and bent down to examine Scout. The badger tilted his head, watching the massive alien with unwavering focus. Oleth tapped a clawed finger against the transparent panel. Scout jumped at the barrier, mouth open, revealing surprisingly large teeth for such a small animal. The Draxians burst into laughter. The sound echoed through the cargo bay like rocks tumbling down a mountain. "It has spirit," Oleth said, grinning. "But it is only a cub. Barely a morsel for a real predator. On my world, we would feed such a creature to our battle beasts for sport." Robert felt anger rising in his chest, but he forced himself to remain calm. Getting into a confrontation on his first day at the station would be a disaster. On Earth, we don't measure worth by size. Scout here is actually one of the most fearless animals on the planet. The young Draxian laughed again. "Fearless? This tiny thing? Human, you know nothing of real predators. Our battle beasts are bred from ancient warrior stock, enhanced with the finest genetic modifications. They fear nothing because they are perfect killing machines." "Scout wasn't bred or modified," Robert replied. "He's pure natural evolution. And honey badgers don't back down from anything. Not lions, not leopards, not even Cape buffalo." Oleth made a dismissive gesture with his hand. "Your world must have very weak lions, then. I have seen the galactic databases. Your species has no natural weapons. No scales, no claws, no venom. You are soft. Your animals must be equally soft." Before Robert could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. "Is there a problem here, Captain Oleth?" A human woman in a station commander's uniform approached from the far entrance. She was in her 50s with short gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Commander Alice Park had been running Omega-7 since it opened, and she had a reputation for not tolerating nonsense from anyone. Oleth straightened up, though his expression remained arrogant. "No problem, Commander. I was simply welcoming your newest resident and his collection of pets." "They're not pets," Robert said firmly. "And we were just leaving." Commander Park nodded. "Dr. Hayes, your habitat pods are ready in Section 7. I'll escort you there personally." As Robert began pulling his cart forward, he heard the young Draxian mutter to his companions in their own language. Robert had studied enough xenolinguistics to catch a few words: weak, pathetic, and prey species. Scout made another chittering sound from his crate, softer this time. Robert glanced back and saw the badger still watching the Draxians as they walked away in the opposite direction. There was something in Scout's posture that Robert recognized from their time together on Earth. The animal wasn't scared. He was measuring them, calculating. "Don't worry about Oleth," Commander Park said quietly as they walked. "He's all bluster. The Draxians have controlled the trade routes in this sector for decades, and they don't like that humanity is establishing a presence here. They'll test you, but they know the Galactic Council is watching." Robert nodded, but something gnawed at the back of his mind, a memory from his years working with African wildlife. He had seen honey badgers face down hyenas, challenge leopards, and even harass young elephants. Their fearlessness wasn't stupidity. It was something deeper, something coded into their very nature by millions of years of survival in one of Earth's harshest environments. "Commander," Robert said slowly, "what do the Draxians actually know about Earth animals?" Park smiled grimly. "Only what they've read in databases. Why?" "Because I have a feeling they're about to get an education they won't forget." 3 days passed without incident, and Robert began to relax into his new routine on Station Omega-7. The habitat pods he'd been assigned were better than he'd hoped, with adjustable environmental controls that could mimic various Earth climates. Scout had settled into his enclosure well, spending his days exploring every corner and his nights curled up in a den box Robert had filled with familiar-smelling blankets from Earth. But the peace didn't last. Robert noticed it first in the market sector. Human traders who had been setting up shops were suddenly facing unexplained delays with their shipments. Crates went missing. Permits were held up by bureaucratic red tape that hadn't existed before. And in every case, Draxian merchants seemed to benefit from the setbacks. By the end of the week, 3 human businesses had closed, unable to compete with the sudden obstacles. Robert heard whispers in the corridors. The Draxians were making their move, trying to drive humans off the station before they could establish a real foothold. It all came to a head on a Tuesday evening. Robert had gone to the central cargo bay to pick up a shipment of specialized food supplements for his animals. The bay was mostly empty at this hour, with only a few automated loading drones moving between the massive stacks of containers. He was checking his supply manifest on a data pad when he heard footsteps behind him. "The animal keeper works late," a familiar voice said. Robert turned to find the young Draxian from his first day, the one called Quill by the others. He was alone this time, but he wore combat armor that glinted under the bay's harsh lighting. A plasma pistol hung from his belt. "Just picking up supplies," Robert said evenly, "not looking for trouble." Quill moved closer, his tail swishing behind him in a gesture Robert had learned meant aggression in Draxian body language. "Trouble is already here, human. Your kind doesn't belong on this station. This sector belongs to the Draxian trading clans. It has for 300 years. The Galactic Council approved humanity's presence here," Robert replied, keeping his voice calm. "We have just as much right to be here as anyone else." "Rights." Quill spat the word like poison. "You soft-skinned primitives wave your council approval like it means something. But words on paper don't matter out here on the frontier. Strength matters. Power matters. And you have neither." Robert's hand moved slowly toward his communicator, but Quill was faster. The Draxian's cybernetic arm shot out and grabbed Robert's wrist with crushing force. Robert gasped in pain as metal fingers squeezed his bones. "Drop the communicator," Quill ordered. Robert had no choice. The device clattered to the floor and Quill's foot crushed it with a grinding sound. The Draxian shoved Robert backward into a stack of containers. The impact knocked the wind from his lungs. "Here's how this will work," Quill said, looming over him. "You will pack up your animals. You will leave the station. You will tell your human friends to do the same. If you refuse, accidents will happen. Cargo bays can be dangerous places. People get hurt. Robert struggled to his feet, his ribs aching. You can't threaten me like this. Commander Park is human. She has no real authority here. Quill's reptilian smile showed rows of sharp teeth. The Draxian clans control the merchant councils. We have ships. We have weapons. What do you have? Soft skin and weak animals. A sound echoed from somewhere above them, a chittering, clicking noise that made Quill's head snap upward. Robert's blood went cold as he recognized it. Scout. The badger stood on top of a container 3 levels up, his black eyes fixed on Quill. Somehow the animal had escaped from his habitat pod. Robert had been so focused on his work that he hadn't noticed the security alert that should have triggered on his datapad. Or maybe Scout had been clever enough to avoid triggering it. Quill laughed, a harsh barking sound. Your pet has come to save you? This will be entertaining. Don't, Robert said urgently. Don't provoke him. You don't understand, but Quill wasn't listening. He picked up a metal container about the size of a briefcase and hurled it at the stack of crates near Scout. The container hit with a loud clang, missing the badger by inches. Scout didn't flinch. He didn't run. Instead, he made a sound Robert had only heard once before, when a wild dog had gotten too close to Scout's food back on Earth. It was a growl that seemed too deep, too fierce to come from something so small. More Draxians emerged from the shadows of the cargo bay. Robert realized with growing dread that this had been planned. They had been waiting for an opportunity to confront him away from witnesses. 4 more warriors in combat armor formed a semicircle, cutting off any escape route. One of them looked up at Scout and laughed. Is this the fierce Earth creature? Captain Oleth, you must see this. Captain Oleth himself strode into view from behind a shipping container. His yellow eyes gleamed with anticipation. Ah, perfect timing. Quill, you have done well. Now we will show these humans what happens when prey species pretend to be predators. Robert's mind raced. He counted 6 Draxians, all armed, all enhanced with cybernetic implants that made them faster and stronger than baseline humans. Scout was alone, small, and completely outmatched by any reasonable assessment. But honey badgers weren't reasonable creatures. Scout descended from his perch with surprising speed, moving down the stacked containers in a series of controlled drops. He hit the ground about 20 feet from the nearest Draxian and paused, his body low and coiled like a spring. I'll make you a deal, human, Oleth said casually. Your creature there can fight Quill in single combat. No weapons. If your animal wins, you can stay on the station. If Quill wins, you leave. Fair, yes? That's not fair at all, Robert protested. Quill weighs 3 times what Scout does, and he's covered in armor. Oleth shrugged. Then you should have brought a bigger animal. Or perhaps you should leave now and save us all the time. The other Draxians formed a wider circle, creating an impromptu arena. They were taking bets now, speaking in their own language. Robert caught numbers being thrown around. The odds were heavily in Quill's favor. Quill removed his plasma pistol and tossed it to another Draxian. He rolled his shoulders, and his cybernetic implants whirred softly as they adjusted to combat mode. Come then, little morsel. Let's see this famous Earth ferocity. Scout took 3 steps forward, then stopped. His head lowered, his back arched slightly. And then Robert saw something that made his breath catch in his throat. Scout's eyes had begun to glow. It was faint at first, just a slight luminescence like light reflecting off water, but it grew stronger, shifting from pale silver to an intense blue-white radiance that seemed to come from inside the animal's skull. The fur along Scout's spine stood up in a ridge, and the air around him seemed to shimmer with heat or energy, or something Robert had no name for. The Draxians stopped laughing. What is this? One of them whispered. Scout charged, not with the wild abandon of an enraged animal, but with calculated purpose. He ran straight at Quill's legs, and when the Draxian tried to kick him away, Scout twisted in midair and latched onto the warrior's armored boot. His teeth found a gap in the plating, and Quill roared in pain and surprise. Robert stared in shock as his gentle research companion transformed into something he barely recognized. Scout climbed Quill's body like a tree, claws finding purchase in armor joints, teeth tearing at exposed scales. The Draxian warrior spun and thrashed, but Scout held on with impossible strength. And through it all, the badger's eyes blazed with that otherworldly blue light. Quill's screams echoed through the cargo bay as Scout tore into his armor, with a ferocity that defied the laws of physics. The young Draxian grabbed at the badger with both hands, his cybernetic strength more than enough to crush bones, but Scout twisted away from every grip. The animal moved like liquid violence, finding weak points in the armor that shouldn't have existed, biting through reinforced materials that were designed to withstand plasma fire. Robert watched in stunned silence as his research companion became something else entirely. The blue-white glow from Scout's eyes had spread, creating an aura around the badger's body that pulsed with each heartbeat. The air itself seemed to vibrate with energy, and Robert's skin prickled with static electricity. "Get it off me," Quill shouted, falling to his knees. Blood ran from a dozen wounds where Scout had found gaps in his armor. "Oleth, help!" But Captain Oleth stood frozen, his yellow eyes wide with something Robert had never expected to see in a Draxian warrior's face. Fear. The other Draxians backed away from the fight, their weapons drawn but their hands shaking. Scout released Quill and dropped to the ground, positioning himself between the injured Draxian and Robert. The badger's chest heaved with exertion, and that impossible glow intensified. Robert could feel heat radiating from Scout's small body like standing near a furnace. An alarm shrieked through the cargo bay. Red emergency lights began flashing, and a computerized voice announced, "Warning. Unidentified energy surge detected in Cargo Bay 7. All personnel evacuate immediately." Commander Park's voice crackled over the station's communication system. "Dr. Hayes, what in the name of Earth is happening down there?" "Our sensors are going crazy." Robert fumbled for his backup communicator. "Commander, I don't know how to explain this. He's different. Something's happening to him. We're detecting massive energy readings from your location. Bioenergy, but unlike anything in our databases. Hayes, is your animal dangerous right now?" Robert looked at Scout, who still stood guard over him, eyes blazing. "I honestly don't know." More Draxians poured into the cargo bay, responding to Quill's distress signal. They were fully armed with plasma rifles and wearing heavy combat armor. Robert counted at least a dozen, with more arriving every second. This was becoming a military response. Captain Oleth found his voice. "Kill it! Kill the creature before it attacks again! No!" Robert stepped in front of Scout, his arms spread wide. "Don't shoot. He's only defending himself." One of the Draxian soldiers raised his plasma rifle, targeting Scout. Robert's heart hammered in his chest. He was about to die protecting a honey badger on an alien space station, and the absurdity of it flashed through his mind in a single instant. Then Scout's glow exploded outward in a pulse of pure energy. The wave of light hit the Draxians like a physical force. Plasma rifles sparked and died in their hands. Cybernetic implants flickered and went dark. Even the cargo bay's lighting systems dimmed as if something had drained their power. The Draxians stumbled backward, crying out in confusion as their enhanced bodies suddenly became baseline again. Robert felt the wave pass through him like a warm wind. It didn't hurt. If anything, it felt energizing, like drinking strong coffee or breathing mountain air. His fatigue vanished. His injured wrist stopped aching. He felt more alert, more alive than he had in years. "What did you do?" Oleth gasped, staring at his right arm where cybernetic implants had gone completely dead. "What is this creature?" Robert had no answer. He knelt beside Scout, who had stopped glowing and now sat panting heavily. The badger looked up at him with normal eyes, and Robert saw exhaustion in that familiar face. Whatever had just happened had drained Scout's energy completely. Commander Park burst through the cargo bay entrance with a security team behind her. She took in the scene with practiced efficiency. The injured Draxians, the disabled weapons, Scout sitting quietly beside Robert, and the general atmosphere of shocked confusion. "Somebody better start explaining," she said firmly. "Right now." Before anyone could speak, another alarm sounded. This one was different, more urgent. A young lieutenant ran up to Commander Park with a datapad, his face pale. "Commander, you need to see this. It's not just the badger. Every Earth animal on the station just did the same thing." Park grabbed the datapad and scrolled through the data. Robert watched her expression change from confusion to disbelief, to something close to awe. She looked up at him with new eyes. "Dr. Hayes, I'm reading identical energy signatures from all 17 of your animals. Wolves, eagles, even the domestic cat you brought. They all exhibited the same glowing eyes and energy pulse phenomenon, simultaneously." Robert's scientific mind raced through possibilities. "That's impossible. They're in different sections of the station. separated by hundreds of meters. There's no way they could coordinate. They didn't coordinate, interrupted a new voice. A woman in a white laboratory coat hurried into the cargo bay. She was young, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. Her station identification badge read, Dr. Laura Kim, Xenobiology Research. I was monitoring the bioscans when it happened, she explained breathlessly. Dr. Hayes, your animals didn't coordinate their response. They all responded to the same trigger. When Scout perceived a lethal threat, every Earth animal on this station felt it somehow, and they all reacted the same way. That makes no sense, Robert said. They're different species. Different evolutionary branches. A badger and an eagle have nothing in common neurologically. Dr. Kim pulled up holographic displays from her portable scanner. The images showed energy patterns that looked like nothing Robert had seen before. They have one thing in common. Earth. Dr. Hayes, I need to ask you something important. Has anything like this ever happened on Earth? Have your animals ever exhibited this kind of ability? Robert thought back through years of field research. No, never. I've worked with honey badgers my entire career. Scout is special to me, but he's a normal animal. No glowing eyes, no energy pulses, nothing like this. Then something changed when they left Earth, Dr. Kim concluded. Or more accurately, something activated when they encountered a genuine existential threat in an alien environment. Captain Oleth struggled to his feet, his armor dented and his pride clearly wounded. This is a trick. Human deception. You have implanted weapons into these creatures and, does this look like a weapon to you? Commander Park thrust the data pad toward him. These are bioenergy readings. Organic energy generated by living tissue. The only technology involved is the sensors detecting it. One of the senior Draxian warriors spoke up, his voice rough with age. I have heard legends. Stories from the old clans before we uplifted ourselves with machines. Stories of worlds where life fought so hard to survive that the planet itself became part of the struggle. Crucible worlds, they were called. Myths, Oleth snapped. Children's tales? Maybe not, Dr. Kim said quietly. She pulled up another display, this one showing a galactic map. A single planet was highlighted in red. According to Galactic Council records, Earth was under observation quarantine for 3,000 years before humanity developed spaceflight. The reason given was pending evolutionary assessment. No other species has ever been quarantined that long. Robert felt a chill run down his spine. You're saying the Council knew Earth was different? I'm saying they were afraid to find out what you would become. The emergency council meeting convened 6 hours later in Station Omega-7's largest conference room. Robert sat at the circular table with Scout in a secure carrier beside him, the badger finally sleeping after his exhausting display of power. Commander Park had insisted Robert attend, despite his protests that he was just a wildlife researcher, caught in something far beyond his expertise. Around the table sat representatives from a dozen species. The Draxians had sent Captain Oleth and 2 clan elders, all looking deeply uncomfortable. There were also delegates from the peaceful Telori, the insectoid Kryn, and several others Robert didn't recognize. At the head of the table, a massive holographic display showed the face of Counselor Davin, a silver-skinned being who served as the Galactic Council's liaison for frontier affairs. Let us review what we know, Counselor Davin said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. 3 hours ago, 17 Earth animals aboard Station Omega-7 simultaneously exhibited unprecedented bioenergetic abilities. These abilities manifested in response to a threat situation and resulted in the temporary disruption of Draxian cybernetic technology. Dr. Kim, please present your findings. Dr. Kim stood and activated her data display. Charts and graphs filled the air above the table. The energy output we measured was substantial, roughly equivalent to a Class 3 plasma discharge, but entirely biological in origin. More importantly, the energy had specific targeting characteristics. It disrupted artificial systems while leaving organic tissue unharmed and even enhanced. One of the Kryn delegates clicked its mandibles nervously. Enhanced how? Dr. Hayes reported feeling energized when the pulse passed through him, Dr. Kim explained. His minor injuries healed within minutes. I've since run scans on all humans who were in proximity to the animals during the event. Every single one shows improved cellular function, reduced inflammation, and enhanced neural activity. The effects are temporary, lasting only a few hours, but they're measurable. A Tallery representative, a being that resembled a floating jellyfish, spoke in a melodious voice. This suggests a symbiotic relationship between humans and other Earth species. Most unusual, in our 3 million years of galactic civilization, we have never encountered such a phenomenon. Because you've never encountered a crucible world species, the old Draxian warrior said. Everyone turned to look at him. He stood slowly, his scales showing the wear of centuries. My name is Corvin. I am eldest of the merchant clans, and I remember the old stories that others have forgotten. Counselor Davin's holographic eyes narrowed. What stories, Elder Corvin? Before the Great Peace, before the Galactic Council unified the stars, there was war. Not the small conflicts we know now, but true war that burned entire sectors. The worst of these wars was against a species we called the Void Hunters. They came from a world we destroyed, a world so hostile that every creature there had evolved to fight or die. When they reached space, they nearly ended civilization itself. Robert felt his hands grip the edge of the table. What happened to them? We exterminated them, Corvin said bluntly. Every last one. It took the combined fleets of 50 species and 100 years of fighting, but we ended them. And when it was done, the Council passed the Crucible Protocols. Any world showing similar evolutionary patterns would be quarantined until we could determine if the species there would be peaceful or predatory. Earth was one of these worlds, Counselor Davin said. It wasn't a question, Corvin nodded. The Council has kept this secret for 3,000 years. They feared that if humans knew they were descended from the same type of world that birthed the Void Hunters, it would create panic. Or worse, it might influence human development toward aggression. Commander Park leaned forward. Are you telling me that the entire Galactic Council has been lying to humanity since first contact? Not lying, Counselor Davin said carefully, omitting certain truths for the greater good. The Council's psychological assessment team spent centuries observing humanity. They watched your wars, your struggles, your slow climb toward cooperation. The decision to accept humans into the galactic community was not made lightly. We believed you had overcome your crucible world heritage. But we were wrong, Dr. Kim said softly. We didn't overcome it. We carry it with us. Every human, every Earth creature, we all bear the mark of that harsh evolutionary pressure. Robert looked down at Scout, sleeping peacefully in his carrier. The badger looked so ordinary now, so harmless, but he had seen what Scout could become when threatened. That primal fury, that refusal to back down no matter the odds, that was pure Earth. Millions of years of evolution on a planet that never gave quarter, never showed mercy, never allowed weakness. I don't understand something, Robert said. If this ability is natural to Earth species, why has it never manifested before? I've worked with honey badgers for 20 years. I've seen them fight leopards and survive encounters with lions. Never once did I see anything like what happened today. Dr. Kim pulled up another display, this one showing comparative environmental data, because on Earth they were still in their native ecosystem. The abilities we witnessed today only triggered when Scout faced a threat that was genuinely alien, not just a predator from another part of Earth, but something completely outside his evolutionary experience. The Draxians represent a type of threat that no Earth animal has ever encountered in 4 billion years of evolution. And the response was proportional, added one of the Tallery delegates. Your animal did not kill, it disabled. It protected. Even in its enhanced state, it showed restraint that the Void Hunters never possessed. Captain Oleth had been silent throughout the meeting, but now he spoke. His voice was quieter than Robert had ever heard it. My warrior Quill provoked this confrontation. He threatened Dr. Hayes, he threw objects at the creature. Everything that happened was because we attacked first. Yes, Counselor Davin agreed, and that raises a critical question. If Earth species only exhibit these abilities when facing existential threats, and if they show restraint even then, are they truly dangerous? Or are they simply incredibly well adapted for survival? The room fell silent. Robert watched the various delegates exchange looks, each processing the implications. The Kryn were clicking their mandibles, and what he'd learned was their version of nervous thought. The Talori rippled with color changes that might have been concern or fascination. Elder Corvin spoke again. The Void Hunters were aggressive. They sought conquest. They attacked peaceful worlds without provocation. Is this the nature of humans? Robert thought about Earth's history. The wars, yes. The violence, certainly. but also the cooperation, the art, the science, the desperate struggle to become better than their worst impulses. We've fought wars, he admitted. Terrible ones. But we've also worked incredibly hard to move past them. We created the United Nations, the World Peace Accords, the Global Conservation Initiative. We're not perfect, but we're trying. Trying is what matters, Counselor Davin said. The Void Hunters never tried. They reveled in their violent nature. Humans have spent centuries attempting to overcome yours. That is the difference the Council was looking for. Commander Park stood up. So what happens now? Does the Council re-quarantine Earth? Do they ask us to leave? No. The response came from an unexpected source. Captain Oleth rose to his feet, and every Draxian in the room stiffened in surprise. I speak now for the merchant clans. We have been arrogant. We believed ourselves superior because of our cybernetics, our weapons, our ships. But we are soft. We have lived in peace for so long that we forgot what real strength looks like. He turned to face Robert directly. Your small creature defeated our warrior with nothing but natural ability. It fought with purpose and stopped when the threat ended. This is warrior discipline we have lost. The humans should not be feared. They should be respected. 2 weeks after the council meeting, Robert thought the worst was over. Captain Oleth had publicly apologized and even helped several human traders secure better shipping contracts. The Draxian merchant clan seemed genuinely interested in establishing peaceful cooperation with humanity. Research teams from across the galaxy had arrived to study the Earth animals, always respectful and careful. Scout had become something of a celebrity, with visitors asking to see the glowing badger from observation areas, but peace never lasted long in frontier space. Robert was feeding his wolves when the first explosion rocked Station Omega-7. The habitat pod shook violently, and warning sirens began wailing throughout the complex. He ran to his communication panel and found Commander Park's face on the screen, her expression grim. We're under attack, Park said without preamble. A Draxian battle fleet just emerged from hyperspace. They're demanding we surrender all Earth animals immediately. What? But Oleth said, this isn't Oleth's fleet. These are hardliners from the outer clans. They're calling themselves the true Draxian sovereignty, and they're refusing to acknowledge the peace agreement. Dr. Hayes, I need you to evacuate to the emergency shelters right now. Another explosion, closer this time. Through the transparent walls of his habitat pod, Robert could see fire blooming in the distance where the station's outer hull had been breached. Ships were moving in the darkness beyond, massive Draxian warships bristling with weapons. I'm not leaving the animals, Robert said firmly. Hayes, don't be stupid. We're evacuating all non-essential personnel. You need to... A third explosion cut off her words. The communication screen went dead. Emergency lighting flickered on, bathing everything in red. Robert made his decision in an instant. If the station was going to fall, he would at least make sure the animals had a chance. He ran through the habitat complex, opening enclosures one by one. The wolves emerged first, 5 gray shapes that immediately formed up around him like a pack. His pair of eagles took flight, circling overhead. The big cats, a rescued leopard and a mountain lion, padded out warily. Even his domestic cat, a orange tabby named Ginger, joined the growing group, and Scout. The honey badger chittered urgently, his black eyes locked on Robert's face. I know, buddy, Robert said. I know. The animals moved with him through the corridors, an impossible menagerie that would have been chaos under normal circumstances. But these weren't normal circumstances, and the animals seemed to understand that. They stayed close, alert, their movements coordinated in ways that defied their different species and evolutionary backgrounds. Robert reached the main evacuation corridor to find it blocked. A section of the station hull had collapsed, sealing the route. Behind him, he heard the heavy footsteps of Draxian boarding parties. They were already inside the station. He was trapped with 17 Earth animals and no way out. Well, he muttered to himself, at least we're together. The Draxian soldiers rounded the corner in a tight formation, weapons ready. These weren't merchants or traders. They were professional warriors, heavily armored and bearing plasma rifles that could burn through reinforced steel. Their leader, a scarred veteran with more cybernetics than organic tissue, pointed at Robert. The human with the war beasts. High Command wants you alive. Surrender now and you will not be harmed. These aren't war beasts, Robert said, positioning himself in front of the animals. They're rescue animals. Refugees from habitat destruction? The leader laughed. You expect us to believe that? We know what Earth creatures can do. We've read the reports. Your animals are weapons, and weapons belong to those strong enough to claim them. Behind Robert, Scout made that deep, growling sound again. The wolves joined in, their howls echoing through the corridor. The eagles screeched. Even Ginger the cat hissed with surprising venom. And as their voices rose together, Robert saw it begin. Their eyes started to glow, all of them simultaneously, blue-white light that grew brighter with each passing second. The wolves' eyes blazed like stars. The eagle's gaze cut through the dimness like searchlights. Scout's small form radiated power that made the air shimmer around him. And Robert felt it too. That same energy pulse he'd experienced before, but stronger now. It flowed through him like electricity, making his heart race and his senses sharpen. He could hear individual heartbeats among the soldiers. He could see minute details in their armor, tiny weak points and gaps. His fear didn't vanish, but it transformed into something else. Not courage exactly, but a bone-deep certainty that he would protect these animals or die trying. Fire! The Draxian leader shouted. Plasma bolts filled the corridor with searing light. Robert dove to the side, and the animals scattered with inhuman speed. The wolves split left and right, running along the walls impossibly. The eagles banked in midair, plasma fire passing beneath their wings. The big cats became blurs of muscle and fury. Scout charged straight forward, too small and fast for the soldiers to target. What happened next would be talked about in military academies across the galaxy for generations. The Earth animals attacked with perfect coordination. The wolves went for legs, bringing soldiers down in pairs. The eagles dove from above, talons finding gaps in helmet seals. The big cats struck like thunder, their enhanced strength sending armored warriors crashing into walls. And Scout, tiny Scout, became a whirlwind of teeth and claws that disabled 3 soldiers before they could react. But it was the energy that made the real difference. Every time an animal made contact with a soldier, their glowing touch disrupted cybernetics. Targeting systems failed, power armor locked up, enhanced reflexes slowed to baseline. The Draxians found themselves fighting without their technological advantages, just organic beings against creatures that evolution had been perfecting for millions of years. Robert didn't just watch. He couldn't explain it, but he felt connected to the animals in a way he never had before. When the wolves moved left, he knew to move right. When the eagles dove, he ducked. It was like being part of a single organism with 18 bodies working toward one purpose: survival. He grabbed a fallen plasma rifle, though he'd never fired one before. Somehow his hands knew exactly what to do. The weapon felt natural, like an extension of his arm. He provided covering fire while the animals repositioned, his shots precise despite his lack of training. More Draxian soldiers poured into the corridor. Robert's enhanced awareness counted them. 16 more, all heavily armed. Impossible odds, but Scout didn't care about odds. The badger leaped onto the wall, ran vertically upward, and launched himself at the lead soldier's face. The warrior went down screaming. The wolves followed, a tide of gray fur and glowing blue eyes. The eagles struck from above. The cats flanked, and Robert stood in the center of it all, directing fire, calling warnings, somehow knowing exactly where each animal needed him to be. The Draxian leader struggled to his feet, his armor sparking from multiple animal attacks. He stared at Robert with something between horror and awe. "What are you?" Robert looked at the animals around him, these creatures he'd dedicated his life to protecting. They looked back at him with glowing eyes, waiting for his command. In that moment, he understood something profound. Humans weren't separate from Earth's creatures. They were part of the same crucible, forged by the same harsh world, connected by bonds deeper than species or evolution. When threatened, they didn't just fight alone. They fought as Earth fought, together, fiercely and without surrender. "We're survivors," Robert answered simply. The energy pulse that erupted from the animals this time was 10 times stronger than before. It swept through the corridor like a wave, disabling every piece of Draxian technology. Weapons died, armor locked, even the station's damaged systems flickered as the bioenergy washed over them. When the pulse faded, the Draxian soldiers lay scattered and defeated, their equipment useless, their enhanced bodies reduced to baseline. They were alive but broken, and they stared at Robert and his animals with newly fearful eyes. The battle for Station Omega 7 ended not with a whimper, but with a roar that echoed across the galaxy. The footage of Robert Hayes and his animals defeating 2 platoons of Draxian elite soldiers spread through the galactic network within hours. Every species watched in fascination, as creatures they had dismissed as primitive demonstrated abilities that defied conventional understanding. But it was what came after the fighting that truly changed everything. Robert stood in the same conference room where the emergency council had met, but this time the gathering was far larger. Representatives from every major species in the Galactic Council attended via hologram or in person. The room hummed with a dozen different languages being translated simultaneously. Councillor Davin's holographic form looked older than before, his silver skin showing stress marks. Dr. Hayes, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I must first apologize. The attack on this station was conducted by extremist elements we failed to anticipate. The true Draxian sovereignty has been declared a rogue faction and is being pursued by Council peacekeeping forces. With respect, Counselor, Robert replied. I'm not interested in apologies. I want to know what happens to Earth now. Are we being quarantined again? Are you going to classify us as dangerous? An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Robert could see various delegates exchanging glances, clearly uncertain how to proceed. It was Elder Corvin who finally spoke. The question is not whether Earth species are dangerous, the old Draxian said. Clearly they are. The question is whether that danger can be controlled, or more accurately, whether it needs to be controlled. A Talori delegate rippled with agitated colors. How can you suggest leaving them uncontrolled? We saw what happened. 1 human and 17 animals defeated 40 trained soldiers. Imagine what would happen if humanity militarized this ability. We won't, Commander Park said firmly. She had joined the meeting still wearing damaged combat armor from coordinating the station's defense. Humanity has no interest in conquest. We've spent the last 3 centuries trying to leave that part of our history behind. Words are easy, countered a Kryn representative. The Void Hunters also claimed peaceful intentions before they began their expansion. Robert felt his temper rising. But before he could respond, a new voice entered the conversation. Dr. Laura Kim stepped forward, carrying a data tablet that she placed on the central table. The holographic display above showed complex genetic sequences and evolutionary charts. I've spent the last 2 weeks studying the Earth animals and the humans who interact with them, Dr. Kim said. I've discovered something remarkable. The bioenergy abilities don't activate randomly. They have specific triggers based on threat assessment, and they scale proportionally to the danger faced. When Scout fought Quill, the response was limited. When Dr. Hayes faced lethal force, the response intensified. The system is self-regulating. A built-in safety mechanism, mused one of the council members, a crystalline being whose species Robert didn't recognize. Exactly, Dr. Kim confirmed. But there's more. The abilities only activate when defending, never when attacking. I've run simulations and reviewed all the combat footage. In every instance, the Earth creatures responded to threats against themselves or their human companions. They never initiated aggression. Elder Corvin nodded slowly. The Void Hunters had no such restraint. They attacked without provocation. This is fundamentally different. Counselor Davin studied the data with penetrating attention. Dr. Kim, are you suggesting that Earth's evolutionary crucible created not just fierce survivors, but fierce defenders? I'm saying that Earth's harshness taught its creatures something the Void Hunters never learned. Cooperation. No species on Earth survived alone. Even apex predators like humans relied on pack bonds, family units, and eventually entire civilizations working together. The bioenergy we've observed doesn't just enhance individual ability. It synchronizes groups. It turns separate beings into coordinated teams. Robert thought about the battle in the corridor. The way he'd known instinctively where each animal would move. The perfect timing, the seamless coordination. They hadn't just fought together. They'd fought as one organism with many bodies. This changes the strategic assessment entirely, said the Kryn delegate, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. If Earth species are naturally defensive rather than aggressive, they represent an asset, not a threat. An asset how? Commander Park asked. The galaxy has been at peace for 3,000 years, Counselor Davin explained. In that time, we've grown soft. Our military forces are ceremonial. Our defensive capabilities are minimal because we haven't faced real aggression since the Void Hunters were defeated. But threats still exist on the frontier. Pirate fleets, rogue factions like the true Draxian sovereignty. and unexplored regions where hostile species may still lurk. Robert suddenly understood where this was going. You want humans to be your defenders. Not just humans, Elder Corvin said, gesturing toward Scout, who sat quietly in his carrier beside Robert. Humans and Earth creatures working together as you did in the battle. Your Crucible world heritage makes you uniquely suited for protection roles. You have abilities we've lost or never possessed, but you also have restraint we feared you lacked. A debate erupted among the delegates. Some argued that relying on humans for defense would make the galaxy dependent on a species they barely understood. Others pointed out that the alternative was facing threats like the true Draxian sovereignty with inadequate forces. Robert listened to them argue, feeling the weight of speaking for all humanity in this moment. Finally, he raised his hand for silence. If we accept this role, he said carefully, it has to be on our terms. We're not your soldiers or your weapons. We're partners. Earth animals aren't tools to be deployed. They're living beings who deserve respect and care. If the Council wants our help, they need to understand that. Counselor Davin nodded. What are your terms, Dr. Hayes? First, full transparency. No more secrets about Earth's history or the Council's concerns about us. Second, Earth animals are never removed from their handlers without consent. Scout stays with me, period. Third, humans serve in defensive roles only. We protect, but we don't conquer. And fourth, we get full Council membership with voting rights on all military matters. The delegates erupted again, some supporting the terms while others protested. The argument went on for hours, but gradually a consensus formed. The galaxy needed protection. Earth could provide it, and the terms Robert proposed were reasonable safeguards against the mistakes of the past. When the final vote came, it was nearly unanimous. Earth would join the Galactic Defense Initiative as equal partners, not subordinates. Human ships would patrol frontier space, carrying crews who bonded with Earth animals in ways the galaxy was only beginning to understand. 3 months later, Robert stood on the bridge of the GDS Harmony, humanity's first defensive frigate. The ship was a joint construction project, combining human engineering with alien technology. It carried a crew of 120 humans and 40 Earth animals, carefully matched to handlers who had shown aptitude for the bonding process. Scout sat on Robert's shoulder, a position the Badger had claimed as his own. Through the main view screen, Robert could see Station Omega-7 in the distance, now rebuilt and expanded to serve as the headquarters for the Defense Initiative. Commander Park's face appeared on the communication screen. All systems are green, Dr. Hayes. You're cleared for your first patrol route. Acknowledged, Commander. Setting course for the Outer Rim sectors. As the ship's engines powered up, Robert felt the now familiar tingle of bioenergy activation. Throughout the vessel, Earth animals were connecting with their human partners, creating a web of awareness that made the entire crew more alert, more coordinated, more capable. It wasn't mind control or telepathy. It was something simpler and more profound, the bond between species that had survived Earth together. Scout chittered softly, his eyes glowing faintly in the bridge's dim lighting. Robert reached up to scratch behind the Badger's ears. You know what's funny? He said to his companion. 6 months ago, I was just trying to save a few animals from habitat destruction. Now we're defending the entire galaxy. Captain Oleth's voice crackled over the communication system. He commanded a Draxian escort ship flying in formation with the Harmony, one of several alien vessels that had volunteered to serve alongside the human crews. Dr. Hayes, my sensors indicate optimal formation. Your creatures are adapting well to space operations. They're not creatures, Captain, Robert reminded him gently. They're crew members, of course. My apologies. Shall we proceed? Robert looked around the bridge at his crew, humans and animals working side by side, representatives of a world that had been isolated for millennia, now taking their place among the stars. Not as conquerors, not as weapons, as defenders of those who couldn't defend themselves. Take us out, Robert ordered. Let's show the galaxy what Earth is really about. The ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying with it the hopes of 2 worlds, the harsh crucible that had forged them and the peaceful galaxy they had sworn to protect. Behind them, Station Omega-7 grew smaller in the distance. Ahead lay the unknown frontier, full of dangers that the galaxy had forgotten how to face. But Earth remembered. Earth had never stopped fighting, never stopped surviving, never stopped protecting its own. And now, for the first time in 3,000 years, The galaxy had real guardians again. Scout's eyes stopped glowing as the ship settled into its patrol route. The Badger curled up on Robert's shoulder and went to sleep, content in the knowledge that his human was safe and their pack was strong. And somewhere deep in the ship's hold, a simple plaque had been mounted on the wall. It bore no official seal or military insignia. Just a few words that every Earth creature understood in their bones. We are survivors. We are defenders. We are Earth. The galaxy would learn what that meant, not through conquest or domination, but through the quiet strength of those who had been forged in the crucible and emerged not as monsters, but as protectors. The Age of Earth had begun,